Well, good morning, everybody. We'll call the Public Protection and Judiciary Committee to order and call roll call.
Bob Fiedler.
Present.
Dan Hansen.
Here.
Kathy Leaf.
Present.
Paul Burning.
Here.
Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting? Thank you, Supervisor Leaf, and seconded by Supervisor Hansen, and approved. Public comment. Is there any public comment? Any public comment? No public comment today. Before we get underway, I'd like to, thank Kathy for taking over in February while I was down and traveling in different places. She did a super job. And also recognize Shelley Tomczyk, who we recognized at our county board meeting 2 days ago for her service in the last 2 years on our committee with many insightful comments and lots of good questions. And we wish her the best. Today, normally we'd start out with Ken Witt or the financial chief, but both of them are unavailable this morning. So we're not going to have that on the agenda. So if we had any questions for them, I think we can all feel free to pose them to them if we wanted to. I think the big things, a couple of big things that did occur that Ken might have commented on at our board meeting that we just went through 2 days ago, where there were some overall personnel salary adjustments, and I think we are all familiar with what happened there. So I'll just move on to the second item on the agenda and call on Judge Needham.
Thank you. There's not a lot to update other than thanks to this committee administration and the county board for approving the salary adjustments for the clerk of court's office. They were thrilled and obviously we hope that helps our staffing. As of this morning, Christie is still down 5 full-time and 1 maternity leave, so 6 out of the 12, so we're still at 50%. She has an offer pending, but she was waiting for the action of the county board on Monday night so she could then tell this person what their hopeful starting wage would be. And she told me this morning that there are 5 people in the queue. She hasn't looked at the applicants yet, but we hope that we're going to at least get some of those holes in the dike filled. We have not limited public access to the clerk of courts as of today. With the judicial assistants and the register and probate and the family court commissioner staff helping, we've been able to maintain our regular public hours from 8 to 4:30. But again, as I told all of you, that is time limited in terms of our ability to free up staff to help man the front desk, to read bonds and some other things. Jury trials for February and March were basically suspended, except for cases where we had a speedy trial demand or there were significant victims' rights issues. Those cases still are going to be tried, but if we had 60 trials scheduled, I would venture to say 50 have been pushed out, which again is only sustainable for so long in terms of having to get those back on the docket, having to get those back on the calendar. But again, we have great cooperation between the courts and Christie, register and probate, family court commissioners, and as I said, we're able to get done what we can get done. Some of the frustrations I know for some of our attorneys are that with e-filing, I think they have the belief that when they e-file something, it's instantaneously in the record. That's not true. It comes into the clerk. The clerk has to docket it, review it, identify it, and put it physically into the record. And with short staffing, that's one thing that's not happening as quickly as we would want. And so there's a modest amount of grousing that things that are being filed the day of or the day before aren't showing up in the court file the day we have the hearing. But once it's explained what the situation is, most are relatively understanding. COVID backlogs, I am not sure really how to address this. We know we have a backlog. We know that our backlog is significantly less than some other counties because we really only limited our court hours for 2 weeks, whereas other counties were limiting for a year. Last count, I think Milwaukee County has close to 4,000 cases that are in backlog. Dane County, I think, has around 2,000. And based on some information we have, we're about 150 cases behind. Now, I put an asterisk because last year our felony filings were up 140 cases. So is it backlog, or is it just the fact that we had so many more filings that we are behind in our processing? So our district court administrator, who offices right across the hallway here, is trying to drill down a little bit deeper into whether in fact we have a backlog or we just have so many more cases that have been filed, but with the same number of judicial officials regarding our ability to process and get them timely heard. So that's the court's update. Supervisor.
What's the time delay? Just the average delay for a person who's got a simple charge. What kind of delay are they looking at?
We have case processing guidelines. Those are established by the Supreme Court, and we try to adhere to those for a misdemeanor, which would be a lower level criminal offense. We're supposed to get them processed in 6 months. I would guesstimate that we're probably closer to 8 to 9 months getting those processed, because again, more serious cases bump. And so if I have 5 cases scheduled for jury trial on any particular day, the felony, the substantial battery, the OWI 5th is going to take priority. And so we have cases scheduled, but our ability to get them finished depends on what else we have in the queue in terms of serious cases. But our clearance rate, I think, is around 90%, meaning we're meeting those goals of the Supreme Court 90% of the time, which I think is really good. Not to pat ourselves on the back, but given the volume, 90% I think is an attainable and something that, again, we can live with. And for that 10% that aren't processed, I can give you a reason as to why they haven't gone to trial yet. And that's what the court really asks is, for a case that's an outlier, tell me why it hasn't gone to trial yet or gone to disposition. I can give you the reasons. I mean, it could be someone's in treatment, someone is trying to get their restitution collected up front, so we can give you reasons.
Now, please don't misunderstand. I didn't mean to be critical. I'm just
No.
trying to have a broader understanding of the situation. Thank you, Judge.
Sure, Supervisor Lee.
A little unrelated, I guess, but I saw in the paper the CASA program that you had 2 advocates that you started with, so congratulations.
Well, thank you, and I didn't realize it would get such a big spread in the Hudson Star Observer. In fact, I had a local attorney from River Falls call my home. I wasn't home, so my wife answered, and if you know Max Newhouse, in fact, I told Max he should run for governor at some point. He's just got one of these engaging personalities. Called my wife, said, "Oh, hi, this is Max Newhouse," and my wife's going, I don't know who Max Newhouse is, and so he explained who he was, but he complimented us on that effort. And I know we've had probably 15, 20 people from the community who have called Dustin to say, hey, what's this about and how can we help? So it was a nice ceremony. We're going to duplicate it next Thursday at the CJCC meeting, swearing in, again, to get a little more public exposure. But we're up and running.
Any other questions or observations from Judge Needham? Thank you, Judge. Next one, I'm going to actually look at the sheriff as well as go to the next agenda item, but we'll flow right into the 4th item, Sheriff, from this.
I do have one thing I want to tag on there.
Oh, okay. And Supervisor Hanson also had something.
Maybe it would be a good idea to get Adam involved and make a YouTube that we could put on the county website, just of the swearing in at the CJCC meeting. That would probably be a cool thing to boost up.
Every year, this committee initiates a proclamation of the National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. For this year, it's April 10th through April 16th. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I think we all know generally what our fine staff of folks down in the Emergency Center do. I'll just read the therefore clause. Therefore be it resolved that the Public Protection and Judiciary Committee recognizes the week of April 10th through 16th to be National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in St. Croix County in honor of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep the county and our citizens safe. And I just asked the sheriff if he could just share with us for a minute or two before we get to his agenda item specifically, what those members of our staff do, roughly what their caseload is, and how important they are to your office.
Well, thank you. As I've mentioned before, and as some of you have heard me say, my respect for the dispatch center is immense because they are the very first, in a time of crisis, the very first voice that a citizen hears. They're really the brains of the body of getting us out there. They collect all that information. At times they are maybe the last voice that is heard. They pass along, gather, make our jobs much safer, and it's all under an immense amount of pressure that they do that. So my respect for them is great. Their workload, it ebbs and flows just like ours. When it's snowy and crashes out there, the phones are ringing. You walk in there and you think it's Grand Central. And then there's the downtime. But those downtimes are pierced with that call of the midnight crash. And as you saw in our year-end report, the numbers that they do, the amount of information they run on the computer, into the over a million of running people's driver information, vehicle information. It's pretty staggering, the caseload that they do, and the quality that they do it at. So and that's a reflection of their leadership, it's a reflection of their training, and it's a reflection of who they are. So we are very happy to have them.
So there's over a million calls. How many people are actually working in that center?
So when I say a million, it's a million queries through the time system for 2728. Call taking, it's probably 100,000 phone calls we answer. 100,000 phone calls. So staffing is anywhere from 3 to 4.
So I'm wondering how many of these queries per individual average? It's staggering how many per person they do per year.
Boy, and again, that depends on the shift that they work. Obviously, the day shift is, well, it's obviously thousands as we break it up amongst 18 people. Thousands that they do.
They do an amazing job.
They surely do.
Sheriff, please pass along our best wishes to those folks and our appreciation for all they do. We
Thank
see it all the time, or we don't see it all the time, but we know it's happening all the time. Judge Needham.
Just as, basically to reinforce what the sheriff is calling, we have really contacts with dispatch in two ways. One, when I get the call at 2 in the morning, they're always apologetic for waking me up, but the level of professionalism as well as how they help triage and get us to the officer or get us the information. But the other contact that we have with technology, we now hear those 911 calls when they are played in court as part of evidence in a case, and the degree of calm that those dispatchers exhibit when they're talking to people who are watching someone die or watching someone who is in a very serious situation, but at the same time getting information. And it's an art as to how they try to calm but also extract information so that they can pass it on to law enforcement. And at the same time, they're making notes. It's multitasking, I think, times 10 in terms of what they do. And so from at least the court standpoint, we likewise appreciate the professionalism that we encounter in our jobs as judges, but also in terms of what we hear when we hear those 911 calls in court. So,
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Judge. And we'll just continue with the sheriff with his update and traffic report.
I received from the state an overall traffic crash report from 2016 to 2020. And none of this was compiled by our office, though our information was into the system, and the state came up with this really encompassing crash report. And there's some broken down by township, which is one of the reasons I wanted to share it, because each one of you has an area of concern, not only your home area, but also your area that you represent here. And I also wanted it into the system so the public could read through it as well. I just think, you know, it breaks it down to time of day. It breaks it down to month, July being the least month with crashes, November being the most. 30% of the crashes in St. Croix County are car deer crashes. The age of males, 20 to 24, are the highest for crashes. The day of Friday has the most crashes, but Saturday has the most critical crashes for serious injury and death. And then hotspots of where in each village the most crashes take place. I just thought it was something very interesting to share, that each one would, in their own area and in their own home, travel times would find interesting. So,
Any surprises?
you know,
When I read it,
there were in how many, as you look at the county, how spread out and equalized simply the car deers were.
that was my, when I read it, and I read it pretty carefully, because I spent my first term on the highway committee, and was really fascinated with that work.
Yep.
And I'm a commissioner on the West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, so I've seen this 3 times now. This is really excellent work, but I was just really, really surprised that the most common accident is the deer car crash.
Yep. I would be curious to see prior to 16, before we got all the roundabouts, where the hot areas were around Roberts, around Richmond, Four Corners, and how much that has changed. And I know people don't always care for the roundabouts, but that has greatly impacted our serious injuries and deaths in the county. I think they've been a very beneficial, and I think there's a couple areas that should have them.
Are we going to, and I can ask this to the regional planning as well, are we going to see a follow-up to this? I don't know who paid for this, do you? Did the county, did we pay for this, or did they do this?
They did this. We didn't
Okay.
pay for this. I think this is part of the traffic safety. You know, we plug in the numbers and they just, what we plug in, and what every county, what every municipality plugs in, I think it just parses it out in the system, so.
Supervisor Lee.
So I'm assuming that Robbie sees this too in highway?
Yes.
Good, because that can help us with management.
Yeah. Actually, this was sent to me from, one of those that sent it was emergency management, so it went out to all the leaders.
I'm just going to add that one of my add-on duties, I'll call it, is sitting on the Traffic Safety Committee, which Robbie chairs. And we meet a couple times a year, and I think Robbie was with us in December and gave us a quick overview of traffic. And I know he'd welcome anybody from this committee anytime to attend that committee meeting. They're open to the public, of course, and they're very, very interesting, because we have the highway patrol comes in, and people from the state come in, and the local folks are there, It's really a multi-hour discussion of the issues that have occurred over the previous half year in St. Croix County, together with action items going forward. And there are always action items. Everybody's taking away, well, we better do this, we better do that. And it's really a good process, I think. Anything else, Supervisor Hanson?
Quick plug. This is, as long as this is up, I'd like to just say that I'd like to remind my colleagues, supervisors, and senior staff that the work that the West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission does is superior, and they do a great number of things. And when we are wondering, how does that work, or how can we fix this, we should always consider them as a resource, because this is a prime example of the kind of thing they can provide for us at a very reasonable price. If we're thinking of hiring a consultant, we should always consider, can they do that as a first resource.
I'm just going to, this doesn't deal directly with the sheriff, but Supervisor Hanson just brought up a good point about outside resources that can help us. When I was in Madison a couple of weeks ago for the WCA meeting, I met a young man and a young lady who, and I'm going to get the exact terminology wrong, but were with Wisconsin Extension. And their particular role was to reach out to municipalities, counties, to see how the University of Wisconsin system could assist us in our work. And when I chatted, I had really an extensive chat twice with him, and we agreed to follow up with each other, and we've exchanged emails. And so I would just throw out to this committee, I know we're in the last session for this term, as it were, but if we had thoughts, or if the sheriff or the judge or Susan or Patty or anybody had thoughts on how we might be able to use people, faculty and or students from the University of Wisconsin system to help us either, in this case, accumulate statistics and reports and presentations, or do other work in your offices. I know the folks I talked to were extremely interested in trying to work with St. Croix County on something, and I haven't had a chance to work yet with Ken Witt on how that might work from his perspective, but if we put our imaginations together, I suspect we can get some really talented young people and faculty members to help us if we had creative ideas that we had questions on them regarding. With that, I'll turn to our medical examiner. I'm sorry, Sheriff?
I have two more things. Our staffing levels in the jail, since that has been a topic since last summer. We're allotted 32 spots in the jail. That's from our jail captain and down to floor staff. I offered and received an offer for number 30 on Tuesday. So we're at 30. As I've mentioned in the past, since we removed several caustic factors out of our ranks, we've had 3 jail staff come back. I've had 1 patrol person that just returned and started that had left last fall. So still 2 short in the jail, 1 or 2 on patrol, 1 in investigations, 1 in courts, and 1 in dispatch. That's a pretty good improvement from a lot of people that have done a lot of work to get us to where we're at. So, and one of the beneficial results of that, the many benefits of that, it's also impacted bringing back Huber into the facility. We had everybody out on EHM because of staffing and because of COVID. Those things have changed. So March 11th, we are bringing Huber back, but still kind of a hybrid with EHM. Our plan is that those that are sentenced to Huber will serve the first 25% of their sentence in Huber, the traditional way. Based upon how that goes, they can earn EHM. Not all will earn EHM, but we're going to look at that as kind of a hybrid, because EHM has been successful. We have had a couple lunkers that we've had to haul back in, and they've lost their Huber because they violated the rules. So, but we're getting back to some semblance of 2019. So wanted to relay that to the board as well.
That's a great report. Supervisor Hanson.
I'll make this brief, but I think it's important to say in public. On February 18th, on County Highway T, there was blizzard-like conditions. There was a terrible windstorm. And I was traveling north. In the southbound lane, there were 3 cars that stopped. I don't know why. Maybe an accident, maybe a stall, I don't know. But there was a sheriff's deputy at the rear of that small column of vehicles. I couldn't see the flashing lights on that car until I came upon it. And I want to commend whoever that deputy was for his bravery, putting himself in harm's way, just doing a simple traffic work, but in a blizzard condition. I don't know who he or she was, but I'd like you to find out and tell them that one supervisor witnessed their work and was deeply impressed and appreciative, because it's just a regular course of doing their job. And sincerely, they were in a dangerous situation to help the general public in a regular traffic situation in a blizzard. And it was really good work.
Many of those things take place, but yes, thank you very much for recognizing that. Thank you.
We'll turn to our medical examiner, Patty Schachner.
Good morning, everyone. For me, project status update, we actually have the tape on the floor, so that's exciting. Get that. I'm meeting with this. Right, yeah. We met with the cooler vendors last week, and we've got, I'm going to meet with the project manager yet today, just to kind of get the sketches down. Pat, the bids process has started, so we're very excited about this project. We are the talk of the state in the medical examiner world. And actually, I had a couple of forensic pathologists from the southern part of the state call. They're going to be coming up here to tour the facility, and they're very excited about the prospect of regionalization and renting out space so that we could actually do autopsies here in St. Croix County and really start regionalization from the northwestern and northern part of the state. So that is huge. It's all because we have a really good administration, county board, and public protection committee that really understands the importance of what we do in the medical examiner's office. So this is very exciting for us. Our call and caseload were up about 20% over last year. As a matter of fact, we're at capacity today. So this continues to be our issue. So our coolers won't be coming until June, July, August because of shortages and everything. So this is going to be a continued struggle as we move forward, being at capacity. But once we get the new coolers, that'll be very helpful. I mean, that alone is very stressful for the staff and myself, because we need to make sure that we are protecting those that are in our care. We had a late night viewing last night, and I want to thank the sheriff and their staff. Whenever we have viewings, we contact them to make sure that, number one, we're safe in the building when we're there because we're by ourselves, and then also respectful of what the family is going through. So we are continuing to be able to do that for families, and I think it is actually helping with the impact of grieving and also mental health. Really having that time to do viewings, especially with our cremation rate. And when people don't understand what that is this gives our decedent's families time to have that grieving process in a real moment. In a lot of direct cremations, they never get to see their loved ones. So this is very helpful, and I think we're helping a lot of people kind of on the backside of that, and we've had several viewings this year. The other thing is collaborating with university system. We have 2 collaborations. I'm going to be actually doing a class with the UW Extension in the School of Medicine on March 24th, doing a presentation, and then we also have a UW intern going to be with us for 6 weeks this summer, that's going to be able to put together data and everything for us. So that we're utilizing those there. Things. And then next week, we start our collaboration with Polk County. I'm going to be presenting at the Polk County Health and Human Services meeting. John Danny's, their medical examiner, and I are really going to talk about our collaboration with the processes going forward with the scanner. I think this is, having John, who is a physician's assistant, and that direct line with a medical provider is going to be very helpful for us as we start this journey into digital forensics. So it's all good in the medical examiner's office.
I was just going to say, I'm always amazed and impressed when you come in and tell us about what's happening in the office. Sometimes there's been a few crises,
Yeah.
and and you folks have overcome them. Today was great news with the scanner and the cooling systems and the cooperation with UW and with Polk County, and that's huge to do all those things. And so I can see why your office might be the talk of Wisconsin right now, that lots of good things are happening. Thank you so much for everything, Patty. Questions for the medical examiner?
Yeah, I wasn't listening clearly enough, or I was taking notes, but when does the scanner go online?
When I talked to Jim and we had everything going, it looks like it's going to be end of summer. The bid process, I want it tomorrow. I don't know why it can't happen tomorrow. That's how I operate, but I guess there's this thing of waiting and process. So that's what we're doing, waiting and processing. So the bid process takes about a month, and then getting all the stuff started, it just all takes time. So I'm hoping if we can have this project going in 2022, that's a big win for all of us in the county.
If there are no other questions for Patty, I'll just slide right over to the next topic, and that involves Patty as well. She and I and Bob Roret and a number of other folks are getting together tomorrow to continue the discussion that we started a couple months ago on the possible need for a suicide prevention program in the county. We made some good progress when we met before, and this will be our second meeting. Hopefully we'll make some decisions this time and be able to report back in April or certainly May at the latest on our next step in the process. What we'd anticipated, but we still haven't made a final decision on it, is that we might do a program on it where the key people in the county that react to issues related to suicide would put on a public program, educational for the county, perhaps in this room, perhaps in the next couple of months, and then we'd follow it up with a more major program directed toward all the schools in the county, much as the medical examiner's office headed about 3 or 4 years ago very successfully. So we'll see if those are still the priorities and if they're still what we intend to do, but that's just an information update. Anything you'd care to add to that, Patty?
Yes, we had a family of suicide survivors that contacted us and heard about the possible symposium, and they would like to speak at the symposium with kind of focused on what it's like having an adult child with mental illness, and how the process goes through, and then ultimately dying by suicide. And there's a lot of times that people don't understand, how hard it is once the person with mental illness becomes an adult, that they have rights. And, there's a lot of nuances to that conversation, and people that live through that, it's important to hear from them.
Turning to the next item on the agenda, we're going to, what we're doing now is kind of a consummation of, I don't know, Sheriff, maybe 4 to 6 years of effort since the idea came up of touring our new mobile emergency operations vehicle. The sheriff and I believe the deputy sheriff will be bringing us out, chief deputy will be bringing us out there in just a minute. So in just a minute we'll recess from here, but we'll adjourn from the sheriff's office. So are there any other comments that anybody would like to make now before we do that?
You want to do announcements and future?
Oh, I'm sorry. Any announcements or future agenda items at this point? I think we probably won't set a meeting date because we don't quite know when we'll organize, but I'm assuming it'll be something like the same day, same time, when we're organized after the elections in April. Any announcements?
Well, it's been great serving on this committee, and I don't know.
I'm just going to add the same thing. You folks have been absolutely terrific in every regard, and it's been a great committee the last couple of years. Thank you. Any other comments? No? Okay, well, we'll recess from here and reconvene in about 5 minutes in the at the sheriff's office.